right. Let's get going. I guess most people here know you, but for those that don't, if you could go through a quick introduction about yourselves and then about the program that you're representing, just very top line, then we'll dig deeper into them. Joe, please.
I'm Disruption Joe on the Twitters. If you see the Thank Arbitrum Twitter and grants programs, that's the one that I'm working with. I've been in crypto since 2017, worked at Gitcoin for 3 years, did a lot of work with grants and civil defense, and then started the Pluralist grants programs at Arbitrum about a year ago.
Hey guys, Srijith here from Questbook. I am Srijith.eth on Twitter. We've been working with Arbitrum for almost 8 months now. We did a season 1 of grants worth $1 million across 4 domains. And now currently we're doing a $4 million grant program across 4 domains for the next 4 months from now.
Hi guys, I'm Finn, also from Aretta, as Bernard, who was just up on the last panel, so I'll spare you guys the background on Aretta. I'm on the governance team there, and I'm a grants lead for the Uniswap Arbitrum grant program, which is a cross-ecosystem grant program, as the name suggests, between Arbitrum and Uniswap.
Hey, David here, program manager at the Arbitrum Foundation. Part of the team, the ecosystem development team. We have a grants program. It's focused on applications like NFTs, DeFi, social apps. We aim to support them during their initial growth stages on the ecosystem. And yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. So from my side, I'm Daniel Espina, instigator at Arenda. We're a R&D DAO focused on venture building and collaboration tooling. So guys, if you could please tell me a little bit, if someone was going to apply to your program, why they would apply to your program and not another program? Like, how is it different? How does it fit within the landscapes of programs that we have? And let's go the other way around. David, if you could start, please.
Yeah. So if you are an infrastructure team, we normally refer you to the other programs that are in the ecosystem. So for us, it's about supporting those builders that directly contribute with on-chain activity and bringing new active users. I would say the sweet spot for us as well is when you are in a late testnet stage or even on mainnet in Arbitrum. That's like for us the sweet spot because we agree on a grant based on milestones that are focused on your growth, and we also aim to support you not just financially but with other topics like interest in the ecosystem, marketing, and by us giving you this grant, it's also a way that we are aware that you are around and we get a group going, and I think in the end the success of a grantee is not really coming from that financial standpoint, but it's more like after that, what's the impact in the ecosystem? So we want to help on that.
Yeah, and for the Uniswap Arbitrum grant program, and I'll probably refer to it as the UAGP from now on. Obviously, from sort of zooming out, we're quite niche. We're focusing between projects that can provide value at the intersection of Uniswap and Arbitrum. So whereas some of these other programs might be a little bit more generalized, we're looking specifically for projects which are working or looking to work within both ecosystems. I think the synergies between the two ecosystems are actually quite apparent. So if you look just from a factual basis on Arbitrum airdrop, of the people who swapped out of their Arbitrum airdrop, I think 94% of people used Uniswap. So the synergies between the two ecosystems are there, and it's just a matter of sort of capitalizing on those and then making them more sustainable and sort of strengthening the ties between the two ecosystems moving forward.
At Questbook, it's very specific across 4 domains. We have gaming projects, new protocol ideas, which is more like the general domain. We have education, community growth, and events, and dev tooling. So if your project kind of falls under any of these categories, we try to support these builders as much as possible. And we're more, let's say, of the early stage grants compared to the growth stage. So if you're like really early in your build stage or project stage, or you want some early funding, then I guess Questbook would be the right place, as long as it's within these 4 domains.
With Thank Arbitrum, you can go to thankarb.com and immediately start participating and earning like 1 ARB, 2 ARB, 10 ARB, 100 ARB for doing different things, such as like reviewing grants from our program, grants from other programs, doing data assignments, other very small, simple bounties through the Thrive protocol. We can have other humans, people in the Arbitrum ecosystem who have been badged as having done a good job at reviewing to come and say, like, yes, this work was good and should be rewarded. So as opposed to like a normal like kind of questing thing, they auto-validate something that happened, but not the quality. So then things that you auto-validate start to get gamed. And so we kind of solved that problem with the Thrive protocol, which is kind of who the contract is with from the DAO to Thrive. We call the entire program, the pluralistic program, Thank Arbitrum, which has 8 programs underneath it because it's designed as an experimentation to give some like evolutionary pressure to creating the best grant programs out there. Because like David had mentioned that they focus on product market fit bets, like giving money to actual builders who are building dApps and protocols on top of Arbitrum. There's also infrastructure, so that would be like subsidizing like entrepreneurs in a city. If Arbitrum is a city, you're subsidizing gas stations and stores, grocery stores, and we go and find what are all the needs that are being missed. Like, are the roads good? How do we pay like certain service providers? Some operational things. What is the DAO most interested? Researching staking use cases for ARB. Things like that, kickstarting new verticals. So if you look at our 8 programs, they take a specific need of the DAO and match that to a funding mechanism that's unique to that. So, we might get into some of those later, but I think that covers the overall.
Yeah, thank you. And that brings us really nicely, I guess, into the next question I wanted to go, that is, okay, so what are we learning then over the last few months, 6 months, etc., of these grant programs? What do you think from a grantee, or let's say grantees applications perspective, what's working, what's not working in your specific domains? Like, what are we seeing that, these things have provided great results, these I was kind of hopeful for, didn't go so well, etc. And yeah, David, if you could take it.
I think for us, when we give a grant, a lot of the times it's about these builders are joining Arbitrum for first time. And what they need after that is how to grow within Arbitrum. And many times we end up referring them to further programs at the DAO level. And so having that path post giving a grant, I think it's very important for those builders who join straight new from maybe Ethereum mainnet or other ecosystems.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off of that and just have a very similar point. I think one of the big elements that probably goes a little bit less noticed about grant programs is the fact that the people on the committees, or the reviewers, are usually really high context people within the DAO. So, I mean, for the UAGP in particular, I think there's 4 or 5 of the committee actually walking around at GovHack this weekend. And because of that, when you're applying to a program and maybe you're not actually specifically fit for our scope, you're actually getting referred, and you're having these really close touch points with people who can point you in the right direction and sort of give you that salient advice about how to execute on your project or execute on your idea, whatever stage you may be at. So I think the community is sort of an understated element of how important these grant programs are.
Yeah, so for the Questbook program, because having the 4 separate specific domains really helped, because it helped us categorize the builders, and it helped the builders understand where to go really easily. And so that kind of solved a fair problem for us. I'd say I wouldn't say it's a problem, but we're also interested in not just the earliest stage. We want folks to start thinking of grants as a metric to grow their product from, and not just, hey, let me build this and let me shelf this product. So that's kind of, I think, how we should look at Arbitrum grants as overall in the near future, where it's like everything that the grant, like Joe said, should be a subsidy for you to do something that will impact the ecosystem, and not a payment for you to do work. I think that kind of shift in mentality, it's happening now, but I think it will kind of really happen much faster in the near future.
Yeah, rather than being a grant program, you might consider us like a grant ecosystem allocator, because we ran an RFP process, got 100 plus applications of people with different grant ideas associated, or program ideas associated to different things to fund, and then gave 22 of them planning grants, and then held 2-week sprint of coaching them to better align to Arbitrum needs and better match their mechanism. And then 8 of them got selected. So what we've learned in this process in selecting at the program level has been what we need to find is the ability to scale programs. So there's some of the good grant programs that were good one-off things that were one time, and then there's other ones that are scalable. For example, if something works really well in a local region, and that's what they were doing. Like there's one right now that we're doing for orbit and stylus education and adoption, specifically in the Caribbean with the Oasis On-Chain group. Right? And if that works well, we can replicate that in other geographies. We can scale it by giving more money to it each time. And that's what we want to find, and hopefully launch out to maybe even splitting ourselves, or another opco starts up, or we bring in other groups. Maybe Aretta wants to be an ecosystem allocator in the future, not just a program. And that's how we make a pluralistic program, is by continuing to experiment and then finding people who want to operate and iterate, kind of the way Optimism does with their one quadratic funding. Goes, we run it, we iterate, we improve, we run it, we iterate, and improve. So when we run 10 programs at a time, if we find some 2 out of 10, it's hard to choose the best 2 that we're going to scale. And then there's a few that maybe we give the same amount of money the next season and coach, how they could get to that scalability. And then there's others that, they get cut. And we need to try other things, because that's our job in the ecosystem, is continually doing the experimentation so we can find something to iterate on.
Thank you. Let me bring one direct question to Finn as we start to dive deeper into this topic. But you're perhaps an example of a hyper-specialized grant program. How would you see this idea of like hyper-specialization, or especially cross-organization grant programs? Is this something that we should be seeing a lot more? Like, should we have pretty much every major protocol doing cross-grant programs that are hyper-specialized, or how does this relate with the more generalist grant programs?
Yeah, I think we like on the outside in, it may seem quite specialized, just given that we focus on 2 ecosystems. So there's inherently limited projects which are working for both ecosystems. However, when you get into our RFPs, I think we're quite general. So there actually is a fair few projects which fall at the intersection between the 2 ecosystems. And moving forward, yeah, maybe a slightly biased take on this, but I think these opportunities to bring these big ecosystems, which are sort of building in parallel, closer together. Obviously, like I mentioned before, like a lot of synergies. I think at Aretta, we're firm believers of a rising tide floats all ships. So if you can bring these ecosystems together, which are building important things, building the foundation of sort of the next step of Web3, I think that's only a benefit.
Thank you. Yeah,
of course.
So here's the bill from a more generalistic grants program, is that you also need to have objectives, very clear ones. And you have to align those to current trends. So I'm going to put an example. We are generalistic, and we want to support all applications building on Arbitrum. But we have very clear goals internally, and the example here has been lately we've seen the rise of risk-taking solutions, and today actually Arbitrum is the roll-up layer 2, where I think we have 80% of the market in terms of TBL and risk-taking across layer 2s. Well, there's work behind that. It's not just that this risk-taking solutions are choosing Arbitrum, but it's because we've been connecting to those players and we've been pushing for getting them in Arbitrum first. And many times it also involves like, oh, hey, we're going to give you like some grant for doing that. But so it's a push, and you have to understand what's the current trend and align that with the objectives of your grants program, and that's what we aim to do with the Foundation One.
Thank you. I see that as a really powerful mechanism to like also keep adapting what you're pushing on. And Srijith, I'm curious about your perspective specifically, since there is the gaming track, the developer tooling track in these areas. Do you think that there should be many more tracks? Like, I'm giving you the platform to go and pitch this Questbook straight away, but like, yeah, curious to hear your perspective.
It might be biased coming from me from Questbook, but I do think the tracks really help the builders understand where to go, and it's something I've been talking to these others here, like Joe and others here about. Is it's not about just doing it on Questbook, but having these niche track-based programs. So as a new builder, when I'm coming in, it makes it super easy for my life to know where to go, because otherwise, when you have a very, very general program, you're not clear of, all right, what should I apply with, who are the applications, etc. So I think with clear tracks and transparency of what gets accepted, what gets rejected, it makes, I think we could boost the effect of it by getting a lot more builders in from different areas of Web3 by having as many tracks as possible. But.
Thank you. And well, Joe, I'm sure you would have a ton of things to say here, but I want to take it into a slightly different direction. And as you're having this kind of overview on these, how do you see the incubation of new grant programs sitting versus other options like incentives or potentially investments, and this landscape that now is starting to evolve, let's say the palette of options that a DAO can choose from?
Yeah, when you think about what needs to be funded and how it's funded, liquidity incentives, for example, are going to be funded a lot different than paying some people to operationally work on the core operations of the DAO, are different from how you run an RFP process to find people to do services for the DAO. If this was your city, the way you pay people at City Hall is going to be different than the way you hire a sanitation service, right? It's going to be different than paying people like 3 months rent to see if they like it. And if the roads suck and they can't turn their electricity on and the water's poison, you could pay as much of their first year's rent, 2 years rent, they're still gonna move out, right? So somebody needs to keep up the infrastructure as well, right? And there's all our open source dependencies, right? There's tons of code that we rely on that is open source and maintained for free, right? And somebody's got to be looking at that, right? So when I think about, our role in these programs, I love that, like, when somebody's like, I need an early stage gaming grant, I'm like, go to the Questbook program. That's great. There have been a few gaming grants that have ended up going out. One was we did experimental joke race contest last season, and a gaming person who couldn't find another place to get a grant, the gaming one was out of money. They ended up winning through this joke race contest, and it was awesome. But I know that I can send them there. Unfortunately, when you think of those functions, the liquidity incentives, development incentives for a builder, the open source infrastructure, the service providers, the city hall, marketing, all these different things, partnerships, all those different functions are also different across different verticals. So the way you do the liquidity incentives in gaming are going to be different than liquidity incentives for DeFi. Even within that, perps from DEXs are different. So if you think about that, that's a lot of different, a big matrix of ways you can do this. And at the beginning, you want to minimize the friction for like those people that get a grant and minimize the risk for the DAO. But once they've already started with your DAO, you want to start giving them requirements that make them better or more aligned with your ecosystem. So there's even different needs at levels. So there's such a gigantic space for experimentation where we need to fill in these gaps. 4 domains, Questbook could have 30 domains and only be touching like a fifth of what I just described there in like a multi-dimensional thing. So there's plenty of room for more collaboration and more experimentation.
David, I'm particularly interested in your perspective here, since you also have this sort of strategic responsibility as well related to orbit chains, et cetera. Or like, how are you seeing the intersection of the grant programs or their effectiveness? What are the capabilities or limitations of a grant program to advance a strategic objective? Or are these two other responsibility? Are you doing that separately? Mm-hmm. Are these two supporting each other? Tell us more, please.
So, just touching back on what Joe said before around experimentation, I do think that the problem we have at the foundation is that so ideally you focus, you just do small programs, you experiment, you give small grants, and those are quick grants. It allows teams to innovate on specific things that are new. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have the capacity to do that at the foundation level, so it's awesome to see like complementary programs at DAO level that are specifically focused on that they can spin up new programs and close them if they don't work. So I think that's great, and from a foundation standpoint, it's good to be able to rely on partners in the ecosystem for that. Around the orbit chains and grants programs, at the moment, we've been working pretty similar to how we do in general with even, like, you can be an orbit chain, you can be an app on top of Arbitrum One. We treat you the same way. We follow the same guidelines that we have internally for that. So I wouldn't say there hasn't been much difference now. I do expect in the future orbit chains will show what's been working so far in some time, and that's going to allow us to likely focus on those specific topics that we think are going to be more impactful and that will end up winning.
Thank you. And Finn, from your side, you were talking about the RFPs being general enough that you can catch quite a broad variety of people applying, etc. Like, how do you navigate that tension in between too broad, too narrow, finding the sweet spot?
Yeah, it's a great question, and maybe I can just highlight a couple of examples of our grants to sort of showcase the range and what falls under the scope. So the first is AFIMA, which is a research and development firm. Basically, were leading, when Blobspace came out, they basically leading the dashboard, had a bunch of research pieces which have been picked up, and I've actually been sort of liaising with Ethereum core devs on their research and how to implement it, and basically what the impacts would be and the implications would be for people building on top of that research. So that's one example, and then sort of on the other side, and maybe a more clear conceptual example of what the UAGP is sort of looking to fund is Revert Finance, which basically builds these LP dashboards. You may be familiar, they build LP dashboards and analytics. So LPs at Uniswap can sort of track their performance, and they weren't launched on Arbitrum, but now we've funded their audit for them to launch on Arbitrum. So that's sort of the range that we like to keep it quite open so that people can sort of come in and feel inclined to build whatever they want to, but still focusing on that value between those two ecosystems.
Thank you. Srijith, then moving a little bit of the programs in Questbook are very much at the early stage. Like, you're taking a lot of applications that are super young. How do you look at these evolving over time? Like, how are you finding assessing these opportunities and then seeing them grow? Where is all of these people that are going through the grantees going? Is that working? Is that not working? What challenges do you see?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, because we're taking in a lot of early stage grantees, I think one of the most important things that is going to be focused on is how do we keep them post their grant, their grant program. One of the good things with having multiple programs like the LTIP, the STIP, and other incentive programs, or even the foundation program, is what happens now is once a grantee has kind of completed their grant, and if they need more grants to kind of keep going, keep building, and they're looking for a growth grant, then it's fairly easy for us to kind of take them over. It's either we kind of send them to apply to the foundation grants, or we're like, if they need an incentive program to now scale their product, which is we have the STIP and the LTIP for them to apply to. So because of these multi-dimensional programs that we have, it makes it easier for us to get these builders to like really stay in the ecosystem for long term.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, Joe, from your area, you have quite a few programs. Maybe you can give us a few more details as well, and how that relates to this question.
Yeah, I'll give you guys the quickest possible overview of a few of the programs so you understand what kind of things are out there. So we just approved almost $3 million in grants programs that are going to be out. One of them is focusing on Farcaster, where people can use likes on Farcaster if they're the right badge people who like hold Arbitrum or whatever sub-selection, and use some unique algorithms that do really cool data stuff to avoid Sybils and select grants. And so it helps us to get a lot of attention on SocialFi. It's almost like a marketing play, as well as the grants that are chosen. Another one is the Give one with Giveth, where they're going to be onboarding any ARB addresses to a rewards program, and then do a quadratic funding using a new unique cluster matching, so we don't have to use Sybil resistance. Very similar in mechanism to the one we're testing to Farcaster. There's Oasis on-chain, 100,000 to specifically orbit and stylus education and adoption in the Caribbean and Global South, Africa and Latin America. That one's specifically chosen for expanding geographic diversity and its unique scalability promise. There is the Oxcart delegation engine, which is getting 170,000 ARB. And this is one thing they're doing. They call it DRIP, a delegate redelegation incentive program that's consistent weekly payouts with a lottery for redelegations that go to delegates who perform. And since we have some things that already measure performance, it's a kind of trial test to see if this will incentivize more people to continuously update. There is the Charmverse, which is using badge reviewers to bring refi. So one of the things Arbitrum want to do is kickstart new verticals. This was one focused on that, bringing the refi crowd into Arbitrum. Another is our RWA program that Aretta will be running, where we got the step going, and now this is going to fund $300,000 towards the next level of building out and kind of owning that vertical, where the Treasury Sustainability Group that was working on that, I believe they'll end up getting a little fire starter to keep assessing other opportunities rather than just continuing on the RWA themselves, hands off through to another grant program. There's a cartographer syndicate, which, working with Open Source Observer and Karma, is building a universal registry for the grants. Right now, you can look at, for example, it's kind of nice that Open Source Observer in the first season indexed all of the protocols on STIP, so you can look at that code and use it to look at retention, Twitter stats. There's all kinds of other data that you can look at there. And they're going to integrate those tools with the Karma, the registry. Karma is where they update milestones. And then the last one here, I think I missed one, is, there's the retroactive program that is actually trying to do an experiment with 100,000 using a unique data mechanisms for polling votes to actually get over the Keynesian beauty contest we kind of have in almost all grants programs. So that's a huge problem that really nobody's been able to get past in any grant program. And, we get to experiment with that. If that works, that could affect every other grant program we were on.
Thank you. So we're running out of time, but wanted to leave David with a last question to you, since you're in the more mature side of grant programs. Are we seeing enough of, let's say, a pipeline coming to these mature stages? Do we need to be putting in a lot more in the early stage? Do we need to be putting a lot more in the later stage? Where do you see the future of Arbitrum DAO allocations going? You're funding programs, grantees that are a little bit more mature compared to some of these other programs. So are you getting enough at that stage, or is the early stage a little bit dry? Like, do we need to put more at the beginning of the pipeline? Do we need to put more at the later stage of the pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think it's better to have more mature projects applying to us. One of the things that generally the team does not like is actually to reject a project. And it happens a lot of times. We don't like it because it just doesn't mean, the only thing it means is at this moment, it's not the right moment, but we want to still support everyone that's in the ecosystem. So what happens a lot with us is that if it's too early, many times we refer them to Questbook, or many times as well, if it's with something regarding Uniswap, we think, okay, Uniswap folks are actually like better prepared to assess that opportunity. So I would say, yeah, I would say that focusing on advising teams to apply for the grants, for the foundation grants program when those teams are at late testnet is the right advice to do, and not earlier.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you to everyone for listening, and I'm gonna leave it here since we're already over time. Thank you.
Thank you.